economic loss is not the only thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about whether it's a child, whether it's a mum, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's a retiree, or whether it's a man who's working 60 hours a week. People are suffering, more valuable losses than just economic loss. I mean, we're talking about relationships breaking down because someone's agitated or irritated because of chronic pain. We're talking about, relationships between a parent and a child being severed because, mum's taking a lot of OxyContin and isn't as, attuned to the child or responsive to the child as she would normally be. I mean, just because it's not economic loss doesn't mean it's not a loss. And I would even argue that they're more valuable losses that are being felt in those populations than, let's say, someone who loses, 3 days of, 3 days a week work for 6 months. These are relationships are what life is about. And if they're being severed and they're not being recognised by the legislation, then that is something that I think needs to be rectified because it's inaccurate. There's been families where I think what's happened is, there's been a car crash, mum's been hurt, and like I was saying before, she has been distracted because of the pain, more irritable, less able to do things like, let's say, the domestic chores. Same with dad. Dad might find it harder to do chores, etc., or his duties around the house because of some type of back pain, and that causes tension in the in the parenting relationship. And that tension is then felt by the children also. And once again, non-economic loss, but it's still a loss. I mean, it changes the dynamics of families and sometimes extended families as well. This is something which is not just at the individual level, whereas legislation, I guess, is trying to make it very, very individual and very, very rigid in the terms of how it's assessing these things. There are a lot of ways in which people who aren't receiving, let's say, compensation, or people who aren't even being assessed are feeling the effects of a workplace injury or a motor vehicle accident. Money can help them in that. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford treatment or assistance within the home. So let's say mum does have lower back and she's really struggling with keeping up with the kids, keeping up with dad, and she doesn't have the money, or they don't have the money or time for her to go and get some type of physiotherapy which loosens up the back and gives her even a window of 1 or 2 days where she can function almost normally. Then that way money would help her get the treatment that she needs, even if it's psychological, that as well. So let's say mum's depressed, she's sleeping in a lot, she doesn't feel like she can do much. For her to really get through that, she will need some type of psychological help. The research shows that if she sees a therapist for 6, 12, 18 sessions or even longer, then those depressive symptoms might resolve to a point where she can get out of bed and make lunch for the kids, or can get out of bed and do the washing, or can show love and attention to the people that she loves. And if that changes that, and if money enables her to get that type of therapy, then fantastic. It's made a difference in their lives.